Lawyers of Reddit, what was your oh shit moment in court? Sat in on a personal injury case where the plaintiff broke their leg in an accident and had a doctor on the stand as an expert. The woman's lawyer begins questioning the doctor about their experience with leg injuries. He was a well-known orthopedic surgeon in the area. She asks if has ever treated a tibial fracture. The leg bones are tibia and fibula, to which he only answers no. Then she starts grilling him with questions about the tibia. After about 6 to 7 questions she asks, how did you get a medical license and have been able to practice medicine this long if you've never treated a tibial fracture? And begins a small rant about going after his credentials and those that gave it to him, to which he simply responds, there is no bone named the tibia. The lawyer became beet red and everyone in the room tried their best to keep from laughing, including the judge. I was representing a plaintiff in a hit and run case. Plaintiff is testifying and is, despite me preparing them for several hours the previous day, an absolutely terrible witness for her own case. Like, she couldn't even identify the street she was crossing when she was hit by the car. It was a major highway, and we had gone through the sequence of events countless times the day before the hearing. The oh shit moment came during cross-examination. Defense counsel pulls out a picture of my client dressed up and ready to hit the club, which was posted to Facebook the day after the alleged accident. I, thinking quickly, object because the timestamp refers to when it was posted, not when it was taken. Defense counsel show the picture to my client and asked her when the picture was taken. Sure enough, they say it was taken the day after the accident when she was supposedly in unbearable pain. Oh, shit. I was a baby lawyer in my first year representing the 19-year-old child of some rich people in San Mateo County, CA. My client had gone on a bit of a shoplifting spree and we were cleaning all her cases up with a global plea, meaning we handled them all at once. Being new, I filled out the plea form wrong, swapping the counts she was charged with for the counts she was pleading to. It's an easy mistake to make. Every court has their own unique form, and I was unfamiliar with San Mateo's. The judge calls my line, starts reading off the plea form, notices the mistake, and then starts screaming at the top of his lungs, counsel, what is this? What is this? Is this your first day on the job? This is a court of law, and we do not accept mistakes. Fill this plea form correctly, or I will have you taken into custody for contempt. I did not expect a reaction like that. My client, who had clearly just taken a huge bong rip at 8 AM and who was wearing an all pink velvet tracksuit, was looking at me like I was the biggest idiot in the world. I corrected the plea form. The judge made me wait until the very end of the calendar to take my plea. Afterward, he called me up to the bench. In private he told me, sorry to ream you like that. Everyone messes the plea form up, so I always pick the youngest lawyer to yell at. The older guys will grumble and complain, but if you noticed, they all fixed their own forms and we didn't have any more problems. Keeps the calendar running smooth. Where did you go to law school? After that he invited me into his office for coffee and gave me some really good life/work advice. Turns out he likes talking to new lawyers. TL. Doctor, judge loses his shit in court over a simple mistake. Turns out it was all a show for the other lawyers and I have one of the worst/best court experiences of my early career. UK, bear with me on this one. I was in court listening to the most boring old defense lawyer you've ever seen. He was questioning the arresting officer in the case. It was drugs or something like that. Anyway, he's droning on about every little detail and the magistrate was constantly telling him to hurry along. The arresting officer was getting noticeably annoyed and the room became empty pretty quick. Everyone was very bored and annoyed. He was droning about details that I'm not sure anyone was really listening to or cared about. Anyway, he went over arrest times and the likes with the officer, time he admitted the suspect and released him. He had bored the officer to the point where he was barely paying attention. So he was admitted in at 21:45 on the night in question. Yes, and released the night after. Yes, and that was what? Just after 10 PM. Yes, what time after 10? I don't know, 10:15 maybe, so my client was detained for more than 24 hours. Wait, the penny dropped. The officer let his guard down and had revealed he kept the defendant for more than 24 hours, which is the maximum time for detention in the UK. The defense rested, and the magistrate threw the case out immediately. Well played, sir, well played. I think this qualifies, though it wasn't me, that was the lawyer. Got called for jury duty. Was at the jury selection phase, and they asked if anyone here thinks they should not. Blah blah. Defendant was in the room. I raised my hand. The defending lawyer looked at me like, oh, this ought to be good, and asked me to explain. I suggested I tell them in private. He insisted I tell the courtroom. I said, okay, I probably shouldn't be on this jury because I was on a previous jury for this man which returned a guilty verdict. Lawyer's face went oh shit. Commotion and a wait while they looked up records. Yep, verified. Whole jury was now tainted. Everyone goes home and they start over. I was interning for a judge. We were in the middle of voir dire for what was frankly not that exciting of a criminal case. Half-day trial expected, not salacious details or violence or anything. 75 potential jurors in the room. And when my judge didn't let a guy out of jury duty because he'd have to pick up his kids, that guy proceeded to say in front of everyone that if he was made to show up next week he'd make it the shortest trial ever and find him guilty right out of the gate. My judge was an incredibly even-keel guy. Nothing shook him or got a rise out of him, and he was an expert at figuring out what he wanted to say in the most neutral fashion possible before he said it. Conversations with him took forever because there was a pause before every sentence. But then, this guy poisons an entire jury pool of 75 people. We had to individually question each person to see if that little outburst was going to affect their impartiality, etc. 75 in-camera interviews later, judge pulls the guy back in front of everybody and begins to scream at him about disrespecting him, the courts, and every other juror's time. Me, the attorneys, and the court reporter go white-faced because we didn't know this was coming. The guy didn't have to sit for jury duty, but I still don't know if he got to pick his kids up, since he spent a couple days in jail for contempt. I was involved in a pretty messy custody case. The other party was a mess and had kept the child from my client for a few weeks. Op was playing lots of stupid games and kept requesting continuances. I requested a drug test, which the judge ordered. However, the op didn't show up for it. To clarify, he did show up. He just stood in front of the toilet for literally 2 hours and claimed he couldn't pee. I was representing the plaintiff, so the burden was on me. I called multiple witnesses that testified to the defendant's drug use. So, opposing counsel decides to call their client for direct examination and asks, "You don't use heroin and crack, right?" That is, for the non-lawyers, a very stupid question for many reasons, especially considering his client didn't show up for his drug test. However, I fully expected the defendant to just lie and say he was clean. After the question was asked, there was a really long pause and the defendant said, "Yes, I do both of those drugs." My head almost exploded. I didn't ask any questions on cross-examination because I didn't want to muddy the waters. I won, and the child is doing great. Not mine, but my boss's one. She had to defend a small-time delinquent as duty solicitor. Before going to court, he asked her what he should do. She explained to him if he was cooperative and truthful, his sentence would be milder. After hearing the case, the judge asked him if he wanted to add something. He got up and explained to the judge, "My counsel told me to be truthful, so I wanted to tell you that I not only did the robbery I'm being heard for, but also several others in the region." He continued to admit to several robberies that had been unsolved yet, and everyone, even the state attorney Wafasapaming, was in court for a directions hearing. The judge was already in a bad mood and asked why we were here for such a seemingly pointless litigation. Without giving details, he was right. The barrister starts to make our case, and I'm taking notes about areas we need to further explore when I hear, "Excuse me, why were you so rude to me?" The client, who had been told to not come, had come to court that day and was evidently incensed by the judge questioning the merit of their case. They berated the judge for about 3 minutes, with me and my co-counsel first stunned and then trying to shut them up before he adjourned the hearing. The case did not go very well, to my client's surprise and fury. Big sigh.